Welcome, my beautiful friend. This is a Time to Care the Caregivers podcast, and I'm Isabel Melgarejo, your host. Today, with me, I have Deborah Armstrong. She's a life coach, and she is one of the most passionate people that I know in terms of women's rights. Welcome, Deborah.
Thank you, Isabel. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks for coming. So, tell us a little bit more about yourself, about the work you do.
Okay. So as Isabel mentioned earlier, I am a life coach. My company is called Armstrong Empowerment Coaching. And what I do is I help women navigate any challenges that they may have in working in executive positions. My target population are women that are African American and that have had challenges in working in environments or spaces where they feel unwanted or unwelcome. However, my services are open to any individual. In addition to that, I've been honored to be able to work in a capacity of different fields as a social worker. So I'm an MSW, which stands for Master's Social Worker. And what I've done in that arena is worked from starting with infancy all the way to seniors. And I've done that in a variety of fields, such as child welfare worker, where when children were taken from home, basically what I did was help them get reunited with their family or their caretakers. In addition, then I started working with battered women, which is one of my passions of working with that population. I started a domestic violence shelter many years ago. I no longer am affiliated with the shelter, where we housed women and their children that were escaping violent homes. Then I started working in the jail system, where I provided advocacy as well as gave them resources for once they were getting out of the jail in or prison. My clients were primarily women there too. And then I ventured over into the senior population. And so that is such an awesome population to work with to watch them as they're aging, to hear their thoughts and their passions. So I'm really excited about doing that. So what I've done.
Yeah, your journey has been so impressive because you've experienced life in all of its components, from all of it,
Exactly.
absolutely all of it. And I remember when we first met, we were talking about isolation and how certain circumstances in our lives, like caregiving, isolate us.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the systems that we currently have are not conducive for us to be out there and connect with others, because the older we get, the less resources we have. So, for example, a lot of people don't want to lose their car keys because they lose freedom. And it's not like they are losing freedom, they can still go places. But without an effective public transportation system, it is very hard getting to places if you don't have a car.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us more about isolation and how that happens.
Okay. Yes, and I love that example you gave, because that's a true example what many people face. I just wanted to start off by just telling you, the audience, that I'm talking about isolation, but you'll hear me use the word loneliness, and you'll hear me use the word of being isolated, okay? And so isolation is defined as the pieces or a fact of isolating ourselves or being isolated. And so there's some statistics I think that people need to know about as well. And that is that the U.S. Surgeon General advisory pretty much in 2022 stated that 1 out of 2 people experience loneliness.
Oh,
It was,
wow.
yes, that's what I said. Yes. And so that was amazing. It was just wow. So out of that, 20 to 30% of these same people felt that they were lonely. So that's another statistic that was out there as well. And then unfortunately, being isolated, being lonely can lead to some terminal illness. It can also lead to death. And so about 29% of the people that are isolated are at the risk of dying or actually committing suicide. And then it's such an important issue nowadays that within the Medicare system, that skilled nursing facilities are asked to ask the question about to the residents that are residing in their facilities if they feel isolation by the ones that they love, by the ones that they live with, not by strangers. These are people that they are actually connected with. And it has been noted that 57% of those individuals have stated that they have felt lonely at some time.
That is heartbreaking, because you can be alone. And
Mhm,
I personally spend a lot of alone time.
mhm,
I work from home, so I'm alone a good chunk of
mhm,
the time.
mhm.
Um, and even when my husband is here, he we are by ourselves a lot of the time, but I don't feel lonely. I
Right.
know that I can go and knock the door and someone will answer. But what this tells me is that we are not building those connections.
Right. That's true. That's true. And even with that being said, which is a very true point, there's times where the connections may be built, especially among the seniors, but they still feel lonely. And it's because they cannot connect with the conversations that maybe their children or grandchildren are talking about, because that they don't understand it. They some of them don't have the connection of being able to use social media. They don't know how, or they don't want to know how. So those are also things that causes them to feel isolated, that they can't relate to
Yeah.
what's, yes. Yeah. And and I also see isolation as being a mental health factor, which is not a bad thing. Okay, it's something that we need to be aware of. And the reason why I said that is a mental health factor is because what it leads to, you know, it leads to depression, it leads to PTSD, it leads to people having suicidal thoughts, it leads to so many other things. And the reason why I'm very excited that you allowed me to come onto your show today is because the month of May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So I'm speaking to your audience just to help them to become aware of how one issue such as isolation impacts our families, our communities.
Yes. This is not going to be aired in May, but we're recording this in May. So yeah, it is important. And I believe that we should be raising awareness about mental health all the time,
Mhm,
because we are losing people to suicide, and we're losing people to their mental illnesses all the
mhm,
time.
right,
And we don't even pay attention to how this affects everybody. We
that's-
don't pay attention on how someone who's depressed and is losing their income, they're losing their families, they're losing life because they are depressed. Even if they were not committing suicide, they are losing valuable time in their lives.
right, right. We see this happening in our country right now. People losing their employment, something that they've been doing for years and were really good at it. And all of a sudden now I don't have an income, which means I lose the benefits of being able to go certain places that I used to enjoy going. I lose the opportunity of being able to be connected with certain groups of people. I lose the opportunity of instead of feeling like I was okay and normal, now I'm feeling isolated and feeling like I'm a nobody, or that maybe I wasn't good enough. So it generates so many different factors.
So, is there a difference between being lonely and being isolated?
There is a slight difference between the two, but not enough to really say that there's a difference. Because usually being lonely is being when you're isolated, loneliness is just one of the factors of it.
So, which other factors would play into being lonely?
Okay, so there's several of them. Okay, and so these are factors such as traumatic events, being involved anywhere from being a victim of child abuse to being a victim of domestic violence to being raped to being um, racism. All of those are things that causes people to feel isolated. Then there's living in communities such as small communities where there's not a whole lot of outlet space out there where you can go and enjoy and do things. Like living in a big city, you have so much more where you can go to plays, you can go to games, you just could go so much. You can travel, you have the vehicles and things like that. Where if you live in a small community, your next city next town may be 60 miles away. You may have one gas station, and so you got to limit your gas output that you're using because there may not be another one until maybe 50 miles away. Things like that. And then, of course, there's the ageism, which I spoke about earlier. And then there's interpersonal feelings. Some people just have the feeling that I'm not good enough. And because I'm not good enough, then whatever I do is not going to matter. So they're not going to even try. They're not going to trust people. They're not going to want to go out there and do things with other people because they feel like, why? They see themselves as a failure. And then economics play a big part of it as well. That cuts our resources. People feel like, okay, I can't buy my best friend over here a birthday present because I don't have the money to do so, or I don't have the money to go out to her party, and so therefore they feel reserved, they feel isolated, and they stay in their world because they don't want to be viewed as someone that can't afford their best friend a gift. But I think the biggest factor that we as Americans and the whole world, to be honest with you, have faced was COVID. COVID taught
Mhm.
every single one of us how to be isolated. We didn't choose it. We didn't like it, but it just happened. And it caught all of us in a wave of shock to the point that not only was COVID a disease that was hurting a lot of people, ending up in the hospital. People were seeing things such as people unfortunately passing away because of the disease. And then we noticed that COVID taught us, stay in your house. Don't go grocery shopping. Wear a mask. Don't show your face. You know, be careful who you talk to. Don't go visit your loved one in the hospital. It taught us stay away from family, stop family reunions and family activities. It taught us so much. But I think what COVID taught me the most is I have a grandson, and he was about 7 years old when COVID hit. And so they got out of school, as you may know, quickly. So they didn't finish their school year, and then they didn't go to school the following year until later on. And so when my grandson went to school, his first day of returning back to school was actually a virtual classroom. And what I noticed is how the kids in his class were so excited to see one another because they hadn't seen each other in months. All they did was talk about what they did do or what they didn't do, what they liked, what they didn't like. And these are kids that are in elementary school. And so I was just noticing how chitty chatty they were. And I also noticed how the teacher lost control because she was trying to teach the class and she was unable to because they would not be silent and talking to each other. So she had to stop teaching the class. And this lasts for at least 50 minutes.
Mhm.
And so it made me think how much they were even isolated. And going back to what you said earlier, how we don't pay attention. We know how it affects us as adults, but we don't pay attention to how it affects the children, how it affects those that maybe are always isolated. We don't think in those terms. And so those are some of the factors that cause people to be isolated.
Yeah. And I think even you can feel isolated even when you're within a group of people.
Mhm.
For the past year, I've been the social chair for the junior women's club here in Fort Worth. And I've been planning events and parties throughout a year.
Mhm.
And yesterday on the closing dinner, we mentioned about doing a gift exchange of about $10. Um, and I was commenting with a friend that the gifts I purchased were more than $10. I gave more gifts of the ones that I received. So there were people that didn't receive, who didn't bring anything.
Right.
And and I was telling her, like, I feel bad because I went the extra mile. I
Mhm.
put more money,
Mhm.
and I bought everyone something different. I bought every person something that I feel that would be a good gift for them.
Right. Right.
So I took all these additional steps and
Mhm.
considerations when gifting something to somebody.
Mhm.
And even that, like, as we were saying earlier today, I'm a grown-up woman, I can deal with that. But when you keep adding those things into your life,
Mhm.
that can definitely add into a lot of bitterness, a lot of isolation, a
Mhm.
lot of feeling lonely.
Right. Right, that's true. I agree with you. I've been there myself too, where I felt isolated by many people. And to be honest with you, speaking from an African American woman, this is something that myself and my race has felt for many, many years isolated.
Mhm.
And it all goes back to what I mentioned earlier, and that is that you're not good enough. You don't look the right way. You don't talk the right way. You don't wear the right clothes. You don't wear the right hairstyle. You are abandoned. I remember being in meetings where they would ask a question, and I would raise my hand wanting to answer, and many times I wasn't even called on. You know, when I started the shelter program and I was trying to get funding from somebody, I recall going to the place where um, I was the only one that was asked what was the credentials of my staff. I was the only African American woman up there, or African American human being up there, that was asked that. No one else was asked that question.
Yeah, and I think obviously racism brings a lot of that,
Mhm.
because you're putting people in a different box
Mhm.
and making them believe that they, or feel that they don't belong.
Right.
And I think that happens with ageism, sexism, all the isms. You're
Mhm.
putting people in another box and wanting them feel that they don't belong. And
Right.
I can't say I've ever experienced racism, because I haven't. But when you open these kinds of these kinds of conversations and you learn from other people, I think it is very valuable, because we all have different perspectives.
Mhm.
And when you learn,
Mhm.
then you start understanding and comprehending the other side, and you can actually do something about it.
Mhm. That's true. That's true. And I shared that story with you just to show that there's a connection between all types of isolations that we experience, because it sets all of us aside. It doesn't recognize us, regardless of what we did or what we didn't do. You know, what we contributed, what we didn't contribute. It still separates and keeps people apart.
Yeah.
And it does that by instilling fear and people neglecting us.
Yeah, and I think caregiving, throughout the caregiving journey, and right now that we're talking about race, I believe African Americans have it even harder than other people because of racism. And on top of that, you're isolating people because the community is not built for seniors.
Mm-hmm.
We
That's true.
say that we want to welcome them, but the reality is that we're not.
Right.
Um, I was, and I think this was mentioned in another podcast earlier, or I had this conversation, but um, I was talking with Alara, who also came to the podcast, and she was saying how we welcome when someone graduates, we welcome them, and there's a lot of resources for someone who's graduating college. But when we retire,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't happen.
Right.
We welcome babies. There
Mm-hmm.
is trillion things for new moms. There's other moms, there is grandmas, there is all the system supporting the new mom.
Mm-hmm.
But when we go and care for our parents or other loved ones,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing.
Right.
Even restaurants, you go to a restaurant and there is, I'm not saying every single restaurant, but
Right.
there is games for children. You
Mm-hmm.
go to a doctor's office and there's toys for children.
Right.
But if you're taking your loved one with Alzheimer's to a doctor's appointment, it's just a blank office.
Right. That's true. That's so true.
So we are not putting those resources into the seniors, which makes isolation bigger.
Right.
And on top of that, there's so much work to do.
Right.
So you're putting all this additional work and stuff to do. You're cutting on the things that you like doing. And on top of that, the community, the society is not built for you. So what do you do?
Yeah. So what do you do? Like, I work in a skilled nursing home right now. Okay. In addition to being a coach. And so one of the things as a social worker, one of the things I always do is I always pay attention to my we call them residents. And so I go into their room and I just speak to them every day. How you doing today? Give you an example. We had a lady that her daughter was out of town on a vacation, and she was getting saddened because she thought, because her daughter comes sees her every day, and she goes, I don't know what I'm going to do. And she goes, my nephew's going to come up, but she prefers her daughter, of course. And I told her, I said, you know what? I said, I'm going to come and talk to you every day that I'm working. And I did that, even if it was just 15 minutes. And that was such a delight for her to knowing that she wasn't by herself. So that's one of the things we can do. Second thing is I truly will encourage for those that are listening, that if you may have a loved one that's in a group home, assisted living home, or a skilled nursing home, please go visit them. You'd be surprised how many people, their family will not come to see them. They will not call them. And even if you don't live in the same state, please do that. Take them out on an outing, and that outing could be taking them outside in the nice weather. That outing could be if the agency is having an ice cream social, take them to that ice cream social. I mean, these agencies have departments that will try to get them together to get out of sight of their room and outside of their space. But it's amazing how many choose not to do that. But if the family member comes and encourages them to do that, then they will do it. Another thing is to encourage the loved ones or the person. It could be someone in your own home. Encourage them to watch a funny movie. Turn a funny movie on. Have children around them. They delight in seeing young people playing and acting silly and laughing and things like that. Talk to your other family members about what plan you're going to put in place for the seniors to being able to have a good time. When you take them to the doctor's appointment, if they like crossword puzzles, bring a crossword puzzle so they can do a crossword puzzle while they're waiting, there. For those that like to color, brain colored crayons and pencils, and as well as paper are designed for them to color. If the agency isn't providing it, then the facility isn't providing it, then we must provide it,
Mhm.
Take them out on short walks. Turn on some music and just have them start dancing. Because movement is really important. Because when we don't move, then what we do is we tend to lose, and our legs and our arms and everything start becoming contracted. So just any type of movement. It could go for a fresh walk outside. It could be dancing inside of your home. It could be singing. It just could be a variety of different things. And then the next thing is maybe you might want to read to them. Just read a book that they used to like, their favorite book. Play their favorite music that they used to truly enjoy. You have to go back into their world. Like my mother's older, and she's healthy and everything, thank God. But one of the things that I do to her to bring joy in her life is because I'll show her on Facebook the pictures of the family that maybe she hasn't seen in a while. And that brings her so much joy, just seeing what they look like today, because she hasn't seen them in a long time, or just to hear them talk. It's the simple things we do for our loved ones, or volunteers can do for the aging population. So many things. So those are just a few examples.
Yeah. And those are great examples. And one of the things that I always talk in my programs is that we need to build those systems because they don't exist. We have to build them. And the same way moms come out with their babies and they bring diapers and clean clothes and food and toys, we need to start getting into practice of repeating that when we're going out with seniors who need additional support.
Exactly. That's true. Yes, we do. Yes. And then, we can also be an advocate for all seniors by informing the doctor's offices or the places where maybe they go get their nails done, or wherever they frequent often, the importance of having these things there.
Yes.
Even if it's just one page, and it's just having them there available for them.
Yes, and I think we can very easily ask for, if we're in a restaurant and they offer coloring books and crayons for kids, we can ask the same for our loved ones, even if they're 80, or even if for ourselves, if we want to draw or something. There was this restaurant my parents loved to go to, and they would put butcher paper throughout the table. And would bring crayons, and it would be fun because we would all be drawing and painting, and it was not a children thing. It was everybody was doing it. And I would find it very interesting because every single table people would be drawing and doing stuff on the butcher paper while waiting for their food. And I just find it fascinating because I've never seen that ever again in any other restaurant anywhere in the world.
Right. Yeah, same here. I saw it once too. Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, it is. Yes.
Yeah, so we need to start advocating for ourselves. And I think the first step, well, probably you can change if I'm saying something incorrectly, but I think the first step is being aware of it and then creating the strategies to move away. So you're the expert.
Yeah.
So if people want to avoid isolation, they should come to you.
Yes, I can definitely help with that. And the way that they can reach me is I'm on social media under Deborah Armstrong, MSW. So if you just search that, and then I do have a email address, and the email address is Deborah, DEBORAH, Armstrong. No, you know what? I'm giving you another one. Forgive me, okay? The correct one. Sorry.
We're going to put everything in the show notes, so
Okay.
Don't worry about that. We're gonna make sure that to put all your links and in our show notes.
Okay, so I don't have to tell you what they are. Okay. Okay. So yes, you can reach me on social media.
And
Okay.
your email, we're gonna put everything in the show notes. So is there anything else you want to share with us today?
I want to share that, basically people recognize and remember us not by what we say, but what we do. So
Mhm.
show everybody a friendly smile. Encourage everybody to know that they're better than what they think they are. Spend a few minutes of your time just listening to them. They're not asking you to fix them. They're asking you to listen.
Yes.
That's what I would share.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a delight talking with you.
Thank you. I enjoyed it very much. You take care of yourself.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.